Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining PortaOne's webinar. Your microphones are muted. That's intentional. You'll be able to type your questions into a Q&A window at any point in time. Let's just give a minute or two for those who are joining. You know, sometimes Zoom requires you to update the application, or maybe people have difficulty connecting. So let's just allow them 1 or 2 minutes, and then we will start. Okay, let's start. So hello, everyone. Welcome to PortaOne webinar about new features in PortaSwitch maintenance releases 97 through 99. Your microphones are muted. That's intentional. You can type your questions into the Q&A section at any point in time. So this webinar is going to be conducted by your usual suspects. That's myself, Mike Kidek, product officer at PortaOne, and my colleague Svetlana, who is a project manager. This is the agenda for today's webinar. Basically, we will cover the new features in PortaSwitch itself. Then we will, Svetlana will speak about our developments with mobile application, with PortaPhone for mobile phones. I will also share some plans regarding Mart, and we do have a gift for you. At the end of the webinar, you will receive a gift. Before we jump into the discussion of the new features, I would like to ask you a very quick question. So basically, I would like to know what is the level of interest for all these different topics. Yeah. So I'm launching a poll. It's a very quick one. Just please choose the answer, like which topic is the most interesting for you. You should see the poll on your screen now. Okay, 5 people have already answered. That's nice. Okay, we have a total of 21. Let's just give a few more seconds for everybody to. Okay, 26 people already voted. I think that's good enough. So I can see that almost 60% of voters are here for the new features from, you know, new PortaSwitch features. That's nice. But also like 30% chose the last option, which is like all of the above. So thank you for your answers, and let's proceed with those PortaSwitch new features. The first one, well, and actually let me explain how we are going to do this webinar. This is going to be a bit unusual. So I do appreciate your answers, but I understand that all of you came to this webinar just because you don't want to read the documentation. And that's very understandable, and that's okay. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going just to start from the page 1 and read all of it for you. I'm just kidding, of course. So let's talk about the first feature. And so my first block of the features is related to the cloud PBX. As you know, we've been doing quite an effort on catching up on cloud PBX features, but this one stands out, I would say. Shared line appearance is not your typical PBX feature, I would say. This is a different way of organizing telephony at work. It's usually not in the offices, although I've heard of a number of cases when it was used, this setup was used in the offices. And I'm sure that most of you are familiar with this term, but if some of you don't know what it is, let me briefly explain. So unlike the typical PBX setup, when you have extensions, like each person gets a dedicated extension and you can always reach that person by calling their extension. In shared line configuration, it is a way when a single phone line, a single phone number, if you like, is used on multiple devices. So basically, you have like 10 phones in your office and you have a main number for your office. So you set up all 10 phones to have the first line provisioned with your main company number. When a call comes in, it actually rings on all 10 phones. When somebody answers the call, they can speak to the caller, and on remaining 9 phones, this line is showing up as busy. Yeah. If the person needs to understand that the person answering the call understands that this call has to be discussed with somebody else, yeah, with a colleague, they don't do your normal, call transfer. They don't do the call parking. They simply put a call on hold, and then in some way they tell the colleagues that, hey, there is a call waiting for you on line 1. Yeah, and when that person approaches one of the 10 phones, they see that on line 1 there is a held call, because on all phones it will show up this line as the one with a call being active, and usually there is a blinking red light which indicates that there is a held call on that line. So they simply press a button of that phone line, let's say line number 1, and they continue the conversation. Information about the call being, held or waiting, a caller waiting for a person is usually passed to a colleague either through a public announcement system or face-to-face. Yeah, you basically approach your colleague and you tell him that, or maybe the colleague is sitting, in the opposite corner of the office, and you just tell them that, hey, there is a call waiting for you on line 1. This setup is typically used in non-office environments, basically places where people don't have a dedicated desk where they spend like all their working hours. This would typically be shop floors, warehouses. I've heard of shared line appearance being used in some hospitals as well, because doctors and nurses, they are moving around. They are most of the time they are not in one single place. So these are the typical environments where this shared line appearance is used. And I know that the market of this is big, even though this feature probably goes back to the era of even before analog PBXs. But a lot of people are used to telephony done in this way. And from MR99, PortaSwitch natively supports this feature. So basically, not only can you have multiple phones operating with a single phone line, you can also use automatic provisioning for all these devices with a single account. So auto provisioning would also work, and will have you. And of course, most modern phone models, they support more than one phone line. So basically, you will have several phones, let's say 4 phone lines configured on all 10 devices. Yeah, so when line number 1 is busy and somebody needs to make a phone call, they see that line 1 is red on their phone, on the phone that they approached. So they just use line number 2. They push a button on line number 2 and make their phone call. What I'm trying to say here is that there is still quite a big market of users of such telephony. And I'm sure that in your countries, there are companies like that as well. And with the introduction of this feature, you can now reach out to these companies, and basically they are your potential customers now. That's it for the shared line appearance. Now let's proceed with features which are, more relevant for conventional PBXs, or for PBXs as we're used to think about them. So call parking is one of those, typical features of the cloud PBX, and we had it for probably a decade available in our system. But there is one specific issue with call parking, and I've heard complaints from our customers, and I'm sure it was your clientele that complained about it, that, if there is a call which was parked by somebody, some employee in the office, and it was supposed to be retrieved from a different location, maybe by another person, but people tend to forget things. It's a human nature to forget one thing or the other. So sometimes these calls are parked and they are left hanging, on PortaSwitch forever. And obviously, this is a very bad user experience in terms that the user is waiting on the line. Nobody ever gets back to them. And they basically need to hang up and call again, get through to the same person, and so on. So it's really a bad user experience. So we've introduced an automatic return of such a call. If it was parked and forgotten about, the call will automatically go back to the person who parked the call. Basically, it will be returned to the same extension. The timeout, obviously, it happens after a specific period of time. The timeout by default is 2 minutes, but it is configurable for each PBX customer. So, people can set up whatever they need in this regard. And if your customer uses phone models which do support distinctive ringing, so the phone can, provide a different ringtone when incoming call comes in, such returned park calls will ring differently than normal incoming calls. So basically, this feature is designed to improve user experience of clients of your clients, let's say, those who call to your customers. Another feature for PBXs, group paging. And that's, that's a typical feature which is used in office environments. We had paging again available for probably a decade, maybe even more than a decade in PortaSwitch, but that was a basic extension to extension page. When typically a C-level executive needs to talk to the assistant, they would simply push a button on the phone, and that phone answers immediately, turns on the speakerphone, and the manager can talk to the assistant right away without waiting for him or for her to answer the call. Now, group paging allows to make public announcements. Basically, it works with hand groups, and specific members of the hand groups, designated members of the hand group. It's not just any random hand group members that can, page everybody else and make an announcement. Your customers are able to choose those hand group members who are allowed to make this paging calls on the self-care portal. And such caller would, dial a hand group number with a special prefix, let's say *35. So they dial, let's say your sales department is 101, and the person who wants to make an announcement, they would dial *35 101. It means that the call go simultaneously to all extensions within the hand group. Phones of these extensions answer the call automatically, turn on the speakerphone, and once all phones are connected, the caller hears a notification, basically a beep sound, that, you know, now all calls are connected, feel free to make an announcement. And then the caller can convey whatever message they have for the colleagues. Obviously, automatic answering of auto-answering of calls has to be supported by IP phones. There is no standard in SIP protocol for implementation of this auto-answering, so different brands of phones and even different models of phones require a different SIP message to do the automatic answering. But if your customers do have such phones which support automatic answering, then group paging is a new feature which you can you know, offer to your cloud PBX customers. Oh, I forgot to mention one more thing. I know that some of the companies are looking to replace their public announcement systems, especially if these are, you know, legacy systems, very expensive to maintain, sometimes without even a proper support. So this feature could, in some cases, work as a replacement for public announcement system. Anyway, let's proceed with the next one, and that's it's not just a feature, it's several integrations that we made in PortaSwitch for the portals developed you know, outside of PortaSwitch. You know, building user-friendly portals is very popular these days. PortaOne is trying to catch up with this trend, and you know, we've introduced the Cloud PBX self-care portal for your Cloud PBX user. We recently introduced the IoT self-care portal for those IoT customers that they can manage their devices and so on. But we know that many of our customers prefer to develop these portals on their own, or maybe hire third-party companies to do the development. And the integrations that we've done is with regard to access to such portals. So let's say you have your cloud, you develop your own Cloud PBX portal. And your customers log into that portal to manage PBX, maybe to check some financial information like current balance, latest invoices, things like that. And you want specific groups of customers to have access only to specific portions of the information. So let's say if they are PBX administrator, they should have access to extensions, to hand groups, to auto attendant management, but they should not be viewing invoices, should not be, maybe they shouldn't even see the current balance. With maintenance release 99, you can now have your portal structure imported into PortaSwitch, and then you go through a standard route when you modify or you create your custom role, you know, a Porta billing role for your users, for end users. So you create a custom role, and in addition to normal permissions, you know, standard permissions where you could block some access to some information or make some information read-only, you will also have a separate section where you would manage visibility of different parts of your portal. Mind you, the permissions, the native permissions inside PortaSwitch, for example, to invoicing information and visibility on the self-care portal are two different kinds of permission. Please don't mix them up. So if you need to completely restrict access to some portion of information, like, so it's not accessible on the portal, it's not accessible through the API, not in any way for a particular group of users. You create a role and you modify native Porta billing permissions. But if you want to hide something just on the self-care portal, then you basically make that part of the portal a specific page or specific tab on the page. You make it invisible just on the portal. These are separate permissions. And another integration that we did here is basically we enhance the existing feature. You know, Porta billing administrators have a login button when they open a customer record. There is a login button which allows you to automatically log in as a customer into the default self-care portal. With maintenance release 99, all these custom or third-party developed portals, which the structure of which is imported into Porta billing, can also be accessed through a single click on the customer record. I mentioned a few times import of the portal structure. And how you do it is that you prepare a file which basically lists all the, how should I call it, structural elements of your portal as a tree. It's a basic XML file. We will provide you with example. We have this file developed for our Cloud PBX portal. So you can make a similar file for your third party for the third party portal and just import it into PortaBill. And then when you set up permissions, like which parts are visible, which parts are not visible to a particular role, you basically use those elements from the portal structure, and for each element you define whether it's visible or not visible to a particular group of users. And with this, I would like to pass the microphone to Svetlana, who is going to speak about some other new features in PortaSwitch.
Hello, everyone. I'll continue the presentation. And now the next topic is combined quotas for IoT or MTM. So let's find out how to increase sales channels for service providers. These days, a typical requirement in IoT business is to share quotas among devices to optimize internet usage between SIM cards. You, as a service provider of IoT or M2M services, can offer to your customer group quotas for multiple SIM cards with the same plan. For example, if a customer activates 10 SIM cards, each with a plan of 30 gigabytes, those gigabytes get combined into a single pool of 300 gigabytes. But if a customer activates 5 other cards with a plan of 10 gigabytes, those cards will share a pool of 50 gigabytes. The PortaOne IoT self-care portal increase or decrease the group quotas depending on the number of SIM cards a customer activates or deactivates under the same plan. This feature can also be implemented for your custom self-care portals. The PortaBill API allows you to implement increase or decrease group quotas based on some specific events, such as SIM card activation, deactivation, or plan change. What is more, the group quota prorating can be implemented if a SIM cards, for example, activated in the middle of the billing period. So what benefits does this offer you? With this feature, you can increase sales by offering group quotas to your prospects. And let's move to our next topic. Billing resellers for subscribers bundle overage. As you remember earlier, we have introduced a feature of resellers billing based on the packages they sell and not just on services usage. So with it, you can charge your resellers recurrent fee for every customer they sign up. Typically, these packages include quotas. If the customer uses services within their quota, that customer is not charged by any extra fee. The same for the reseller. As soon as the quota is used up, the reseller may start charging the customer, and it will charge an overage fee, and you start charging the reseller as well. Let's consider the following example. Let's imagine that you have prepared a package for mobile users which includes 10 gigabytes. Whenever your reseller sells it to the end user and charge a monthly fee, with the previously mentioned feature, you can immediately charge the reseller a monthly fee. But what happens when a user consumes all 10 gigabytes? The resellers start charging an overage fee of 2 cents per megabyte, and now you can also charge the reseller for 1 cent per megabyte. The service package can also include a service wallet based on the volume of service use, for example, minutes. So as a service provider, you can receive revenue that is proportional to the revenue of the reseller. Now on to our next topic, how to ensure your tax compliance in US and Canada. As you know, in the US and Canada, the tax rates vary depending on the taxation jurisdiction, which is defined by the user physical location. Previously, PortaBilling assessed taxes based on locations specified on the customer level. But when customers have users in different locations, service provider can now configure PortaBilling to assess taxes based on each user's location. To identify the user's location, we use a zip code. It should be specified in a PortaBilling. For now, this feature is available for SureTax taxation plugin only. And let's check an example. A USA service provider has the customer ABC located in New York. Most ABC employees work in the New York office, and we have 2 employees work remotely in Los Angeles. By default, only the customer zip code is used to calculate taxes. For SureTax, to calculate taxes based on each employee's location, the administrator first needs to make sure that the correct zip code are set on the employee's account. The administrator actually adds missing zip codes for New York and Los Angeles location. Then the administrator enables the tax jurisdiction per account option for the customer. As a result, different taxes are applied to accounts according to their tax jurisdiction. When SureTax provides tax amount to PortaBilling, Taxation-𝐥𝐺 is created per account. So with this feature, service providers can ensure tax compliance. And finally, my favorite topic, I'll share with you our progress with the mobile application that we're actually developing. But before we get to that, can you please answer this question for me? Can you, Mike, can you please run a poll? Okay, so what is your current status regarding a mobile application? What options do we have here? I'm waiting for your solution. I'm already using a solution from another provider, or I've developed my own solution. Waiting for your answers.
Svetlana, I believe we missed one more option, which is probably wouldn't get many votes anyway, but the missing option is probably something like, I don't need a mobile application at all. That's also quite possible, yeah. So I don't expect that everyone would provide an answer, because some service providers probably don't need an application. Anyway, I can see that around 60% of those who voted, and that's 27 at this point, 60% of them are waiting for PortaOne solution.
Okay, it's great. So I will share what we have in this area. Okay, so let me share the screen from my phone. I want to show you the new version that we have. Okay, a couple of seconds. Okay, so this is a new version of the application. We completely changed the design of it. This version contains some basic functionality like push notification, so your application will be up and running if even your phone goes to a background mode, or will be able to, and it will be able to receive some inbound calls. And for sure, it will save your phone's battery. Okay, audio and video calls, we have favorite contacts, recent calls, and that's it. Let's log into the application. We are logging in a demo mode. I'm just entering my phone number. Okay. Okay. Waiting a couple of seconds of verification code. It comes to my email address. Okay. Okay, and we are in. So what we have here, the first screen is a favorite contacts. I can add some contacts from my contact list. As you can see, we have an integration with local contact book and internal contact book. So I'm adding some contacts. Okay, adding them. Okay, so after that, I will see them on my favorite tab. Yeah. Let's go on a keypad. And the last thing that I want to show you is settings. We have extended the setting functionality. So on the top, I can see my name, my balance. That's it. So that's it. I can stop sharing. Okay. This was a quick overview in what we have in the to show you the interface of the application. That's it. So what are our plans and next steps? In a few weeks, we will publish the iOS version of the application to the Apple Store. Our clients that have already subscribed to the PortaPhone service via add-on Mart will be able to use a special sign-in button that you have just seen to evaluate the product via their own system. All others who want to participate in the testing, please contact our sales team. We will appreciate your feedback and launch the product version as soon as possible. The Android version of the application will be available by the end of June. One more great thing that this client application will be open source. What does it mean? The backend of PortaPhone is available as usual as a subscription via add-on Mart. We share with you and the community the front part of the application. We will continue our own interface development, but if you want to have your own development or built in this functionality to your product, we are sharing with you the possibility via popular open source license. The access to our repository will be available by the end of June. So everyone who is interested in this project can review, download, extend the code from the repository, and so on. Now back to Mike.
Thank you, Svetlana. So that was all for PortaSwitch new features and for PortaPhone developments. I would like to also take a few minutes of your time to discuss what we are building for add-on Mart. As you know, we launched it probably a year ago. It was originally named iPass, but it's called add-on Mart these days. So basically, that's a market where you can sign up to various modules, various features, various modules, and PortaPhone is one of the things which is offered on that market. The major benefit of the add-on Mart is that the functionality that you see here is not bound to maintenance releases, and to activate any of the modules that you see on the add-on Mart, you don't need to wait for the next maintenance release with a new feature to be, released, and then your system updated, and so on and so on. So basically, it shortens the time to get access to some new functionality. The functionality which is related to PortaSwitch is typically payment processors, auto provisioning of various phone models, and so on. But there are also others, as you can see on my screenshot, there are other modules which are not related, which are not directly tied to PortaSwitch. For example, self-care portals or PortaPhone application. The first news in this regard is that we are building a self-care portal. That's what you see on this screenshot. That's a new self-care portal where those who subscribe to add-on Mart can manage their modules. Yeah, you can start a free trial of some module, you can purchase subscription to some module, stop subscription, and things like that. In addition to that, when you sign up for a specific module, you'll be able to do some basic configuration on your own. So, instead of a traditional way of, contacting sales, getting a subscriptions and talking to support, passing all the technical parameters like, I don't know, URL, name of the application for PortaPhone or some other things, passing it to support and then support doing the configuration for you. Now you will have the ability to do the basic configuration of those modules on your own. And then I have one more screenshot which basically demonstrates how your subscriptions look like on this portal. These are real screenshots from the real portal. It's actually in the final stages of testing as we speak, and it should be the testing should be finished by the end of this month, and then the portal will go live. And those of you who have subscriptions to Add-on Mart, they will be able to to manage your subscriptions on your own. But that's not all. We are also developing a few new modules for Add-on Mart. One of them being an integration with Mondago's CRM platform. The other one is auto provisioning for flying voice IP phones. And then we are also going to update a Stripe plugin, the one that we already had for probably a year. Stripe plugin, Stripe payment processor allows you to be SCA compliant. This is especially important for our European customers, SCA compliance for accepting payments. So we are going to update the plugin, making SCA compliance or configuration to be SCA compliance even easier. So these are the plans with developing new modules. Again, Add-on Mart was not created just for PortaOne to develop new modules. We already have examples where our customers develop some modules, and those modules are published on that Mart. So if you develop some interesting integration, some interesting add-on for the PortaSwitch, please contact us, and we will discuss the options how to get it rolling in the Add-on Mart, and so other customers can benefit from your development as well. So that's all I wanted to share with regard to Add-on Mart. Now let's get back to PortaSwitch and let's speak about what we are planning in the near future. The hot topic these days is charging of calls based on not only the destination point, but also on the origination of the call. Basically, charging based on CLD and CLI. We supported this kind of billing for quite a while for a few specific cases, like in US, interstate or interstate billing depends on CLI and CLD, right? Depends on the origination, not only on the destination. And it's been available for more than a decade. Then in Europe, the most wholesale providers these days charge differently for calls to Europe, depending whether the origination is within Europe or outside of Europe. And that one has been supported for probably a year. So basically you have within EEA calls, outside of EEA calls. A similar thing is used in South Africa. I know that many carriers in South Africa charge a different fee depending on whether the call is originated inside the country or outside of the country. But these are all very kind of specific cases. And I know that there are more complex cases when it's not just like a selection between price A and price B, it's more sophisticated than that. We've already contacted a few tier 1 carriers, and we have some rate sheets from some of the carriers. For example, Colt in the United States has basically 4 tiers of origin-based charging. So we already collected the information from several carriers, and we are already designing a solution for this to accommodate for more sophisticated cases when charging based on CLI and CLD is required. The other thing that we are working on is bring your own device. That's basically for IP phones. PortaSwitch had auto provisioning again for many years. So basically, when you provide IP phones to your customers, you could always load them into the inventory, assign them to customer accounts, and get the automatic provisioning working. Now, these days, more and more companies, especially those small and medium enterprises, they consider, for example, switching to you from another service provider, but they don't want to replace their IP phones. IP phones are probably brand new or almost new, and there is no need to replace the phones. And of course, such customers can use your service still, but the phones require manual provisioning. So what we are trying to build here is a way for the customers through the self-care portal to enlist those IP phones that they already possess, enlist those IP phones into the system. And from that moment on, you will be able to set up auto provisioning for those phones. The phones will be tied to a particular customer. There will be no way to move those phones, from one customer to another. So there is no space for human errors here. And as I said, you will be able to activate the automatic provisioning for such phones. And the last point here is that we are working on building another taxation solution for US and Canada. In North America, taxation is a bit complex because of the several levels of taxes, like federal, state, and so on. So we already have integration with SureTax and with Avalara, and we are building a third solution as an alternative with compliance solutions. The important thing is that the feature which Svetlana explained to you, the feature of taxation based on each user location, physical location. So basically based on account zip code. That feature will also work for compliance solutions. So it will not only be SureTax, but the compliance solution will also be available as an option for our North American customers. And of course, we'll be happy to work on any feature requests that you have, or if you have some business development idea, but you cannot implement it today because some features are missing in PortaSwitch, or you're not sure how best to set up this specific new service that you want to launch, please do contact us, and we will work with you in order to either deliver additional features, or maybe we will find some creative way to to configure what you require using existing functionality. So these are the plans for the near future. And I mentioned that we do have a gift for you. And that's basically an MVNO checklist. So if you consider launching an MVNO and you are about to engage an MNO, or you consider talking to MNO about launching an MVNO, we've created a checklist for you, which basically allows you to reduce the risk of making most typical mistakes when when MVNOs try to negotiate a deal with MNOs. We collected the information from multiple customers of PortaOne around the globe, and there are specifics in various countries. So we try to accumulate this knowledge and put it into a single document. The link to that MVNO checklist is in the chat. We have just, Tatiana, thank you. She has just published it in the chat. So please open that link, because once the session is over, you will not have access to chat and you will not have this link. Of course, we will publish it on our website when we will publish summary of this webinar, as we normally do. But if you want to read it, today or tomorrow, please do click this link. And I guess that's all for today. And as usual, let's proceed with your questions. I already saw that a few questions were typed in the chat box. Please, I ask you to type your questions into the Q&A window, not into the chat box. It would be much easier for me and Svetlana to keep track of which questions are already answered and which questions still require attention. When you type them into a chat box, it's a bit more trickier. It's more difficult to keep track of the questions. So the first question I have here, it's in the chat, but still, that is a question, what happens, it's related to the call parking, right? To our automatic retrieval of the parked call. And it's a very good question. Jeff, thank you for this question. That's a perfect one. Like if the person parks a call and she or he is busy talking to somebody else, she has another call. And, you know, 2 minutes are over, the call goes back to this person. What happens then? And so there are several options, and it all depends on the particular phone that is used by the person. It also depends on the settings in PortaSwitch. So let me explain. If the phone supports call waiting, and in PortaSwitch call waiting is also allowed, what happens is that while the person is talking to somebody else, the call will still come in. And, you know, typically as phones handle the second call when it comes, while another call is in progress, either it will quietly beep for the person who speaks, maybe it will quietly ring, but different phone produce different way, notify in different ways how the call comes to the, when the call comes to the person while another call is in progress. So that is one option, yeah, if the phone supports call waiting, and then this call just comes in normally, like any other incoming call in that case. If the phone does not support, for example, more than one simultaneous call, if call waiting is disabled in PortaSwitch, so basically the system is supposed to contact the person, but the person is busy. In that case, the system will invoke a standard set of rules which are used to process incoming calls. And that includes the option called default answering mode. So if default answering mode is rings and forwards and voicemail, that's exactly what's going to happen. It won't ring on the phone, obviously, because call waiting is disabled, so it will go into the forward list. If there is no forward list, it will go to the voicemail. If the person has some sort of call screening rules, they may also be involved in handling this call. So when the park call is returned to the extension, it works pretty much like an incoming call, like a normal incoming call. I hope I answered that question, how that call is dealt. Okay, there is a request to test shared line appearance. We do have the phone models. I don't remember phone models on the spot. I'm sorry, but we do have them documented, the ones that we tested shared line appearance on. So I will, please do contact support, and they will provide you with they will refer you to the documentation, and they will provide you with a list of those IP phones that we used for our internal tests. There is a question. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I will kindly ask you to stick to the agenda of this presentation. Yeah, so if you have questions about particular features that I or Svetlana described, please ask questions about that. Questions which are related about the other things which we haven't covered, I'll try to do my best to answer them, but some of the questions I don't want to waste everybody's time, you know, discussing some specific case which concerns one particular customer. So there is a question about, for example, about supporting IPv6 and about you know, native support for IPv6. We did some attempts in providing that support. So we introduced a few things into the product, but native support of IPv6 is not something that we have on a roadmap, at least for 2022. In 2023, we will look at it. Maybe that will be the right time to introduce a native support for IPv6. Okay, that was all for the chat. Let me see the Q&A. There is a request about information on MS Teams integration. That's something we covered in our previous webinars. Let's take this offline. I will tell Klaus that there was a question like that, and Klaus will get in contact with you. He has the most up-to-date information about integration with MS Teams. There is a question whether the old web interface is going to be removed. We actually did remove most of the old GUI on the web interface, and I believe the latest maintenance release doesn't have any features at all on the old interface. However, the code of the old interface is still in the product, and that's because reseller portal still uses the old GUI. We already started building a new reseller portal, and we already have it, but it's not complete. It doesn't have all the features. So that's why for example, MR99 still includes the code of the old web interface, especially those parts which are still used on the reseller portal. Okay, let me mark the questions that I've answered. The next question. It's a question about billing resellers when resellers bill their users. Does this add synchronization between the end users and resellers' quotas? For which services? Okay, that's a very good question. So let me explain. First of all, there is no synchronization as such. Yeah, so the question is there any synchronization between users' quota and resellers' quota? And the reason there is no synchronization because it's a single quota being used on both sides. So there is nothing to synchronize. The way it works is that you include a quota into the product which then reseller assigns to their to accounts of their sub-customers. Yeah, so you include that quota in the product. The quota requires some special designation, but it's still a single quota. And then it works automatically. The moment reseller starts charging the end user for an overage, the same moment the system will automatically start charging reseller. And of course, when end user is charged, it uses the customer tariff. When the reseller is charged, it uses the reseller tariff. So the tariffs are still separate, like it was for many years. But the quota is a single one. So there is a single counter of the usage. Yeah. So like if there is a 10 gigabytes quota and the end user consumes 5 gigs, it's just one counter which is for this end user's quota. And once the user reaches 10 gigs, it's still the same single counter, but then the system uses this counter to calculate charges both for the end user and charges for the reseller. I hope I did answer the question. And yeah, sorry, and the last part of that question was for which services it would work. It actually works for any service. Like you can use it for internet, for SMS, for voice calls. It's the same story. It's just whatever service you include into the quota, it would work for that service. Okay, one more question about the shared line appearance. Actually, okay, so the question is whether the several people can press the same line key and whether it will work as a conference call. Truth to say, I don't have the answer to that question. I'll have to look it up. I'm not sure whether it's going to work or not. Whether a three-way conference, for example, is going to be established. That's something I'll need to double check. There is one more question about self-care portal. which MR includes that one? Okay, so a new web interface for self-care. I'm not sure I understand this question because we do have a new portal, for example, for Cloud PBX customers. And that portal is available as a part of subscription to the add-on Mart. It's basically one of the modules you can activate in the add-on Mart. So it's not, since it's add-on Mart module, it's not tied to maintenance releases. Like it will work with, there is like a minimum requirement, which I don't remember on the spot for this portal. So your system must be at least run some release. I don't remember which one, but then starting from that maintenance release, it doesn't matter which PortaSwitch version you have. You can still activate this new self-care portal for Cloud PBX users. There is also a portal for IoT users, but I don't think that's your case. So for Cloud PBX, we do have new self-care portal. So I guess that's all for the questions today. So thank you very much for joining our webinar. As usual, we will publish a summary and the recording of this webinar on our website, and also the questions with answers on our website, probably in a week or two. We will require some time to prepare those questions and answers. So thank you very much for your participation, and have a nice evening or day, depending on where you are located. Thank you.